In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the primer pump cover on an Echo trimmer. The primer pump cover secures the primer bulb to the primer base. It also has a guard to help protect the hose connections on the primer base, keep them from getting broken. It's possible that over time, the primer pump cover can become rusted or extremely corroded, at which time it should be replaced. Replacing it is easy to do, and we're going to show you how. Primer pump covers, as well as many other parts, can be found on our website. Let's get started. I'll begin by removing the air filter cover and the air filter. Before we remove any of the fuel lines from either the carburetor or the fuel tank, you'll want to make sure that you've drained the gas from the fuel tank. Otherwise it will leak, as the fuel in the tank tends to be slightly pressurized. I've already drained the fuel, so we can go ahead and move on. Now I'll remove the two screws that secure each piece of the intake assembly to the engine. There's the air filter base and the air filter bracket. Now I'll remove the throttle cable and the fuel lines from the carburetor. If the intake gasket hasn't already removed itself, like mine did, it's likely stuck to either the backside of the carburetor or up against the isolator. With the carburetor removed from the trimmer, now I can go ahead and begin disassembling the primer assembly. I'll start with the 4 screws that secure the plate to the carburetor. Now I can pull the plate and the primer bulb away from the carb. I'll install the primer bulb onto the purge base. Now I can install our new primer pump cover, and this all gets secured with the 4 screws. Now I'll replace the carburetor. I'll attach the incoming fuel line, and the fuel return line. Now I'll reinstall the throttle cable. First I'll open up the throttle and thread the cable into the connection on the top of the carburetor. Next, I'll place the nut in its holder on the carburetor and tighten up the secondary nut with a wrench. Now I can reassemble all of the parts in the air intake assembly. I'll insert the screws through the bracket, then the brackets and screws through the air cleaner base, thread the screws through the carburetor, and last I'll install the intake gasket. Now this whole assembly will go back onto the motor. And I'll just reinstall the air filter and air filter cover.